Oli, buen domingo, ¿cómo están? Nosotros ya mejor. Ya mejorcito. ¿Qué tal llevan el calor? ¿Quién lo soporta menos? En general, Alexia es la más intolerante a cualquier incomodidad física. ¿Cada cuánto van al gym? Menos de lo que deberíamos. Vamos como 3-4 veces a la semana, pero necesitamos ir diario. Sobre todo por Alexia. Ahorita le está funcionando muchísimo. Y ahorita fui yo. Y ayer creo que también fui yo. Pues sí, ¿no? O fue antier que me lastimé. Creo que fue antier. Vamos a ver quiero ver con ustedes un video, una entrevista que nos pasaron que no había visto, no hemos visto. Entonces posiblemente trigger warning, no sé qué tanto. Entonces esta entrevista tiene... ¿De cuándo fue este video? Fue de hace 4 meses. Entonces, potencial trigger warning, no sé qué tanto vaya a comentar cosas pesadas, pero de que hay cosas pesadas va a haber. Estoy segura de que va a haber cosas pesadas. Entonces, advertencia. Más o menos. Déjenme probar el audio ahorita.
Good evening.
Me dicen cómo está.
A very warm welcome to the National Library of Australia and to this very special event. Jeni Haynes in conversation with Ginger Gorman. I'm Shirley Headage, I'm the Director of the Human Resources here at the National Library. As we begin, I would like to acknowledge Australia's First Nations people, the First Australians, as the traditional owners and custodians of this land, and give my respect to their elders, past and present, and through them to all Australian Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. Thank you for attending this event, either in person or online, coming to you from the National Library building, beautiful building, on our beautiful Ngunnawal and Ngambri country. If this event brings up any issues for you, or if you feel like you need to speak to someone, please call 1-800-RESPECT, which is 1-800-737-732, the National Sexual Assault, Domestic and Family Violence Counselling Service. It doesn't matter where you live.
¿Qué dice? ¿Qué te sucede en un trigger warning? No, es dependiendo de la persona. No todos reaccionan igual. O sea, trigger es un desencadenante de cualquier cosa que te pueda detonar algún momento estresante. Entonces, dependiendo del trigger, hay algunos que pueden causar ansiedad, hay algunos que pueden causar ataques de pánico, otros que pueden causar mucha disociación, otros pueden causar flashbacks, otros pueden causar switches, otros solo pueden causar emociones muy intensas. Entonces depende de la persona. Pero por lo general avisamos que hay triggers porque se tocan temas intensos y en su caso ya hemos hablado de su libro y sí promovemos que la gente lo lea, pero es extremadamente gráfico. Entonces sí tengan un chingo de cuidado y vayan muy despacio. Mira, justamente aquí nos dice, este video incluye discusiones sobre abuso infantil, abuso doméstico, amenazas de muerte y problemas de salud mental. Y también contienen maldiciones, supongo, y lenguaje fuerte.
Dr. Jeni Haynes and Ginger Gorman are here tonight to share with us Jeni's unique and important story. The Girl in the Green Dress is an unforgettable memoir from a woman who refused to be silenced. What a woman. Amazing. Dr. Jennifer Haynes grew up in Greenacre in Sydney's western suburbs. After enduring horrific abuse, Jeni fought for years to bring her father before the courts to face justice for what he had done. In doing so, she created legal history. Jeni spent 18 years at university, graduating with a degree in psychology, a master's in legal studies and criminal justice, as well as a PhD.
Ya me cae bien esa persona. Perdónenme. amo que introduzcan a Jeni como doctora Jeni, licenciada en psicología, maestra en estudios legales, doctorado, bla, bla, bla. Amo que la humanicen de esa forma y que la pongan como una profesional, como como me trigger, hablando de triggers, me triggerea un poco que digan, hay una niña que le pasó no sé qué, es una mujer actualmente y una mujer bien cabrona. No nos regresen a la niña eterna que está sufriendo algo eternamente. Eso es básicamente el trauma. Perdón, ya me callo, vamos a verlo.
Focusing on victims of crime. Amazing achievement. The fact Jeni survived is testament to the extraordinary strength of her mind. What saved her was the process of dissociation, multiple personal disorder, MPD, or dissociative identity disorder, DID. A defence mechanism that saw Jeni create over 2,500 separate personalities, or alters, who protected her as best as they could from the trauma. With the support of her psychiatrist, Dr. George Blair West, Jeni fought to create a life for herself and bring her father to justice. Ginger Gorman is an award-winning print and radio journalist based here in Canberra in the ACT. She is also a 2006 World Press Institute Fellow. Her freelance work has been published in print and online in publications such as news.com.au, The Huffington Post, The Guardian, The Age, Mamma Mia and the ABC's Drum website. Her first book, Troll Hunting, was published in 2019. Please join me in welcoming Jeni Haynes and Ginger Gorman to discuss Jeni's book, The Girl in the Green Dress.
Thank you so much, Shirley. Thank you. And actually, a lot of troll hunting was written here at the National Library, so I'm very fond of the National Library. Thanks for that lovely welcome. So, isn't it great to be in a room with real people after the pandemic? I think the pandemic taught us that it's lovely to see people face to face. So welcome everybody who's here face to face, and welcome to those of you who are joining online. I know a lot of my mates couldn't make it in person, but they're here online. So before kicking off, I would also like to acknowledge that we are on Aboriginal land and this land was never ceded. And this is the land of the Ngunnawal people, and I'd like to respect their elders too and give a big shout out to them, past and present, and also acknowledge that the Ngunnawal people are great storytellers, and that's what we're going to be doing here tonight. So before we get started, just a few little things. At times we're going to be talking about very difficult issues, and I'm hoping Stuart and the team are going to put the numbers up here. So if you need help, please reach out to these numbers. And we also wanted you to know tonight, if you need to step out at any time, just go for it. We're among friends here. You can step out, you can come back. We're very casual tonight, aren't we, Jeni?
Oh, yes.
And we want you to feel comfortable. And there's also a few things that Jeni's asked me not to talk about tonight. We're going to have a good old yarn. Don't worry, we're going to have a good old gossip here on stage. But if you're wondering, oh, I've read the book and there's a few things that Ginger's not getting to, that's why. We're going to crack on now. So as Shirley suggested, Jeni is the most extraordinary person. And she is a living, breathing example of the strength of the human spirit. So I've never come across someone so brave, so unbreakable, and I've lived in a lot of countries, Jeni, and I've been around the block a few times. So as Shirley said, from the time Jeni was very small, her father abused her and tortured her in ways that are really unimaginable. It's just sadistic, really, to think about. And her brain did something quite amazing, created these alters or multiple personalities, not just a few, but 2,500. Big effort.
Oh, it's a big effort, yes. Actually, it was no effort at all. They just sauntered out the back of my head.
So some people call this dissociative personality disorder, or DID, but Jeni prefers the term MPD, or multiple personality disorder. So that's mostly what we're going to be using tonight. And also, as Shirley said, and I just found this amazing when I was reading about it, I just went...
Pausa. Esto es algo que nosotros repetimos mucho. O sea, cuando hablamos de en general, sí hay que usar los términos más actuales, pero si estamos hablando con una persona que lo vive, siempre con esa persona hay que hablarlo con los términos con las que esa persona se siente cómoda. Siempre. Y eso incluye en terapia. Y términos para cualquier cosa, incluso integración, o sea, si no quieres hablar de integración. Terminamos de leer un libro y hay una persona que no le gusta el término ni alters, ni personalidades, ni partes. Usan el término defensores. Y yo así de, ¡ay, qué bonito! Eso está bien bonito. Pero hay que validar cómo se siente la gente cómoda.
Googled everything about you, and I was reading all the BBC articles about how Jeni made legal history, not just here in Australia, but around the world, when her alters were allowed to testify in court. And Jeni and her alters put her father in jail for 45 years. So this is what her book, The Girl in the Green Dress, is about. It's co-written with Ali Pascoe, and we're not going to go into the details of Jeni's abuse tonight because we don't want to re-traumatise anyone. What we're going to do is really unpick some of the things about the psychological issues and the legal issues. And as Jeni's talking, her alters might pop up and they will usually introduce themselves, as you'll hear. So it's you and me and Jeni, and we'll see who visits us. Jeni, first of all, I'm so grateful to you for surviving. I just feel very privileged to be here to talk to you today. And I'm sure everybody in this room and also listening online feels the same. When I first picked up your book, there was this beautiful quote right at the start. You said, "The happy ending is me." What did you mean by that?
When I look back at my life, I could easily see it as a sad life, horror. But it's not actually a horror story. In many ways, my story is a love story. It's a story of self-love and self-care and thinking about myself in a way that isn't selfish in the way that we perceive selfish to be a negative thing, but being aware of myself and what I needed and being able to provide it for myself. It's a love story. And so at the end of this, it's got a happy ending. And that happy ending is the Jeni sitting here today, where I've jettisoned all the baggy clothing. I've kept the butterflies. Gotta keep the butterflies. But being a sensual, sexual being, which is some of the biggest challenges I've faced, and yet to be able to do that, that makes me smile. That makes me happy. So I'm the happy ending. When I walk out of here, I'm not a sad person. I'll be walking out of here as joyously as I walked in here because I'm happy. At long last, I know what happy really is.
And we were talking just before the microphones were turned on about how much Jeni loves playing games. And the other thing we were talking about is Jeni loves 50s clothing. So you might think it's an accident that I'm dressed up with a flower in my hair, but it's not. It's in honour of Jeni, and we discussed our outfits before we came on stage here. Because you've deliberately worked to put all this joy back into your adult life that you didn't have in childhood.
Absolutely. When I was a child, I wanted to do ballet. Can you imagine my father's face? Yeah. Don't wear very much when you do ballet, and the bruises would have shown, so no ballet. But I wanted that sense of being in control of my body, and I didn't have that. And I've had this craving all my life for the 50s outfits, the beautiful, glamorous 50s. And I was talking to a friend of mine who painted me for the Archibald Award, Renee Broders, and she said, if you could have anything, if you could have you looking like anything, what would you be? I'd be in a 50s poodle skirt. I said, muscle skirts, not on your Nelly. I'm in a 50s poodle dress.
and there's a petticoat underneath, and just so you all know, Jeni also has butterflies on her shoes.
Algo que también mencionaba en su libro es justamente que pasaron mucho tiempo huyendo de su propia feminidad, del ser mujeres. Entonces sí comenta que uno de los logros es justamente poder sentirse femenina, y que incluso los alters masculinos se sintieron más cómodos de sentirse en un cuerpo de mujer, sentirse más femeninos. Entonces está bonito. Creo que no fue un trigger, me quiere dar migraña y sentir la punzadota. Ya decía yo, con razón me dio náuseas hace ratito, pero estoy bien.
As well as her dress.
So for me, it's embracing. It's taking what was, I'd always loved to do, and saying, well, why am I not? Why not wear 50s? Why not have an Audrey Hepburn hairdo? What's stopping me? Well, it's not him anymore. He's in jail. He can't stop me.
Okay, let's talk about that. So in 2019, you were allowed to testify in court along with your alters, and you put your dad in jail for 45 years. What was it like to use the damage that he had done to you and your alters against him in a legal sense, in that very formal justice setting of a court?
People will think it's crazy, but it was amusing. It was actually rather amusing. To be able to use those things that he'd used to call me crazy against him was symbolic, it was amusing. It's also terrifying because I didn't realize that I was the first person with MPD ever to get justice. I didn't realize I was the first person with MPD ever allowed to testify. And I didn't realize that the police were going to use the very things I was trying to minimize, my multiple personalities, my physical injuries. I didn't realize they were using them as evidence against my dad, because I went to the police to protect the unknown child. I never went to the police to get justice for me, because I didn't know that justice and me could even be put in a sentence together. So I tried to hide my multiplicity because I thought that it would decrease my credibility. And yet it actually increased my credibility, because it was a known in psychiatric circles, it was known that MPD could be a result of serious sex crimes. But I was the first person to ever walk into a courtroom and say, yeah, it is, and here I am, deal with it.
Here we are.
Yes, yes.
We're going to unpick that in just a moment, but can you explain to people here today what you mean by the unknown child?
My father, the monster that he is, loves control. So I was terrified that he would find a single woman with children and get into a parental role over that child and start again. And so I went to court, I went to the police, I went everywhere to protect a child that I would never know.
But not for justice for yourself.
God, no. It wasn't about me at all. It was about making sure he could not do this to somebody else. Because I was taught throughout my entire experiences that I didn't matter. I've never mattered. And if you don't matter, you don't go for justice, because you don't know you're allowed to. So I went to stop him ever hurting another child. And He had been pitched as someone that was dangerous to teenagers. And so it was really hard for me when I stopped monitoring him and I went to the police and said, it's your job now. I cannot stand another minute of this man in my life. You have to take care. You've got to start protecting, not expecting me to do it, and you've got to start protecting when that child enters his life at 0, not at 15. Because by the time you get to 15, he's had 15 years of the kinds of things he did to me. And I refuse to let him do that to anybody else ever again.
I want to talk to you about how the police handled this in just a moment, but you said a really interesting thing just a moment ago, and I find this remarkable, and this was that, in fact, your alters helped you testify against your father because they remembered things that Jeni didn't remember. So can you explain to us how, in fact, your MPD helped you recall the evidence against your dad and convict him, whereas most people would have thought, she's bonkers?
Oh, yes, I'm bonkers. Officially and clearly bonkers, although my psychiatrist says there's nothing wrong with me.
With your doctorate that you've gotten? And,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah, but you know, I was bonkers to study as well. But sticking with the question, okay. When I came to write my statement...
MPD es Multiple Personality Disorder, es DID, nada más que así se siente más cómoda Jeni. Sobre todo las personas que estuvieron identificándolo antes del 95.
Police told me, write everything you remember. At that point, I was a integrated person who had previously had multiple personality disorder. And when I came to actually write the statement, it was like watching the big screen. I didn't see the computer in front of me. I didn't feel myself typing. I would watch on the big screen that was in front of my eyes, and 3 hours later, I'd roll away from the table and there would be 5,000 words written. And what would happen was, while I was piecing the memories together, there were other alters typing. There were other alters coming along and adding the sounds, the smells, the tastes. And so it was like creating a jigsaw puzzle. And each alter had a different piece. And that's how we survived Dad, was by breaking up each experience into jigsaw puzzle pieces. So some poor bugger got stuck with what he smelt like. There was a lot of people that had to deal with that. And others dealt with what we heard and the emotional content of what we heard. So when we came to write it back, it was...
Comento. Es una de las cosas que sucede con los con los sistemas polifragmentados. No significa que haya 2.500 personas completamente complejas y completas, ¿no? Muchos de ellos fueron fragmentos muy específicos. Por ejemplo, un olor. Un fragmento representaba un olor, otro representaba una emoción específica en cierto momento. Entonces, por eso se pueden tener tantos, o sea, miles, cientos, porque son partes muy chiquitas. Entonces, no significa que los 2.500 estén activos y tomando el frente todo el tiempo. Simplemente se compartimentalizaron. ¿Tener TID te ha provocado depresión? El trauma te provoca depresión. Y te provoca TID, y te provoca ansiedad, y te provoca fobias, y te provoca flashbacks. O sea, no es que el TID provoque depresión, que es una de las cosas que yo he visto de algunos profesionales muy novatos que creen que porque de hecho sí escuché a una psicóloga que apenas ya ven de psicólogos haciendo contenido de salud mental. La persona con TID está deprimida porque, pues imagínate, no saber mucho de tu vida, pues te deprimes. Yo así de... no, lo estás interpretando mal. O sea, obviamente es una de las cosas que el TID hace que sea más difícil llevar la vida. Obviamente te causa pinches ansiedad, pero uno no tiene depresión por tener TID. Uno tiene depresión y TID por el pinches trauma complejo. Entonces, cuando hay muchas cosas que pasan junto al TID, no es que el TID las cause, es que fueron causadas igual que con el TID por lo que está debajo, que es el trauma complejo. Es lo que tienen en común. Igual si sucede TID con otra cosa, mucho en común. No es el TID, es el trauma.
It's comparatively simple. The student, the one with the 3 degrees, just went and 5,000 words just ran out of her fingers.
But just to be clear here, so Jeni and her alters wrote nearly 1 million words.
Yeah.
And
Never ask me to write down everything I remember unless you have a long time to read it, because it was enormous. And the reason why it was enormous was because I'd been told I was a liar, a fantasist, so much that I wrote everything down to the individual colours on his multicolored jumper, because I wanted to prove that I was telling the truth. Instead of walking into the police station and saying, have I got a story for you? I walked in, almost slunk in, going, I want you to protect this unknown child. And the only way I can do that is to tell you what this monster did to me, but I don't matter. I just want you to know what he did so that you can make sure he doesn't do it to anybody else. It's a very strange way of presenting a case, because the court case went for the legal process went for a total of 24 years. The last piece, the 10-year process, is the Australian bit, and it's a long time. And I talked about the unknown child so much that one day Paul Stamoulis, my police officer, stopped me and he said, I don't care about the unknown child. That's not what I'm here for. I want to get justice for the child I know about. We're 8 years into the legal process by this stage, and it's only just hitting me that this legal process isn't about the unknown child, it's about me. And that shook me, and it took a long time for that to percolate through. But when it did, it hit Symphony like a ton of bricks, because suddenly she realized that for Paul Stamoulis she mattered. And he's our hero. Him and Kim Whitman and Rachel Lawson and Rod Messer, hero cops, all of them. They are amazing. They did everything they said they were going to do. Sure, it took a while, but they did everything that they said they were going to do, and they were amazing. But it took me a long time to work out it was about me. It didn't cross my mind that these police officers were getting upset because it happened to me.
But that's really validating.
It
isn't
is. Well, it is when you finally register that. So when I go into the courtroom on the first day of the trial, and Dad walks in, and I'm ready, prepared, and there's about 1,000 alters sitting there ready to throw the puzzle pieces out. And he thinks he's walking in to deal with this child that he can just intimidate. And
There's a lot of you.
yeah, yeah.
Just for people who are listening who don't know anything about Jeni's case, Symphony is, would you call her your original alter?
It's almost like Mum had twins. It's the strangest thing. I can't explain it any better. Mum had produced a single-bodied child that had a twin head. There was Jennifer Margaret Linda, the original child. and she lasts 6 months. And then her life, her interaction.
Que dice el comentario, ¿a qué edad fue que escribió esas 1000 palabras, millón de palabras, 900,000 palabras? Eso fue, si fue 10 años antes del 2019-2009 y nació en los 70s, entonces tendrá como 39 años. Sí, aproximadamente habrá tenido unos 30, no, pero habrá sido tal vez un poco antes, entre 35 y 40 años, más o menos. Según yo, más o menos a los 27 fue el primer juicio, el que perdió. Entonces fue a partir de los 30 y algo, cuando ya después hizo el statement para el segundo juicio.
With the world ceases. Symphony arrives, and it's like, I can't remember a time when we didn't have symphony. There's no moment when she arrived, she was always there. We are the arrivals. So I'm the entity currently known as Jeni, doing the techie-nucky stuff. Symphony created all of us, and quite unconsciously. So the Jeni you're talking to now is an alter. When Symphony arrives, and I know she will, you'll be talking to all intents and purposes, the Jeni that you think you're talking to, but you're not.
So listen, you feel empowered now, and we're all sitting here watching this amazing person in your gorgeous 50s dress, but it took a long time to get justice. You said 24 years, and I feel tired even hearing that number. So what would you fix about the justice system if you could? If you could wave a magic wand right now?
Oh, geez, what would I do? First thing, I would, hi, muscles.
Muscles, I was about to say, we're talking to muscles.
Yeah. First thing I would do is make sure that the police understand that if you have a person who's been abused, you've got to talk to them. Not just get the evidence and bugger off, but actually come back and say, we're working on your case. Don't expect the victim to be able to chase you up, because we can't. We felt a nuisance if we phoned the police. We were wasting their time. I spent so much time trying to get the body to pick up the phone and call the cops and say, how are things going? And the excuses I heard would go, 4 million words all on their own. But it all came down to, we don't feel like we matter. And when the police say, we'll call you on Tuesday, and then they don't, so you stay home every Tuesday for 6 months because they didn't specify which Tuesday they were going to ring, so you best be home every Tuesday, and then they never ring you. The messages that they give you reinforce what your abuser says, that you're a piece of crap and you don't matter and nobody cares about you. The other thing I would do is I would say historic sex crimes need to be a priority. I had police officers, adorable police officers, but they're working in Bankstown. You know what happens in Bankstown? Lots of drive-by shootings. So my police officer would sit down, I'm going to work on Jeni's case this night. That's it, drive-by shooting, poof. Not a thing was done. And then it just gets put in the folder. That's how come everything takes 10 years. If you've got a victim that tells you that they have DID or MPD, you know you're in for the worst kinds of sex crimes possible. Make it a beep, beep, beep priority. Do not put it in the too hard basket.
You can swear.
Really? I got told I had to be beeping for this show.
Oh, did you? Did you?
Yeah, I had to beep.
I feel
for
like
the
we're all
courts.
grown-ups here, aren't we?
We're all friends,
we're all
right?
grown-ups here.
Well, in that case, if you say you're going to phone somebody, fucking pick up the phone. Even if it's, can't talk to you today, but we're working on it. I mean, I got told, one word from you ruined the whole case. I phoned the cop and said, what's the word? If you tell me, I won't use it. Word was extradition, but it took 2 years for them to tell me that. But everything that I did, the secrecy, okay, so you get fucked by your dad, don't tell. Yeah, and you get abused within the family, don't tell. Then you go to, you leave home if you're lucky, and you start to get into another world, and then you try to talk to people and go, oh, I don't want to hear it, don't tell. Don't tell me, oh, it's too horrible to hear. Then you go to the police and they say, don't tell. And the only people that protects is the fucking abusers. We have a fucked up system in which we grant accused pedophiles, accused child molesters, accused monsters the assumption of innocence. They are innocent until proven guilty. Well, I thought 900,000 words sure as shit proved it. But no, we had to test it in a courtroom. So he's innocent, which makes me an assumed liar for 24 years. I couldn't even put #MeToo on my frickin' Facebook page because that could kill the case because he's watching. So secrecy, we need to have a system in which privacy is something that the victim can ask for, as opposed to it being imposed upon them as a state of play. I had to waive our right to anonymity simply to get his name out there, because he's my dad. Therefore, if we identify him, we will automatically identify the victim. Only if you're famous, only if somebody's looking, and only for family. And if family haven't worked out by the time you've got to court that you're telling the truth, then they're not worth talking to. We had the situation where not allowed to talk meant not allowed to tell, meant you can't get support. If you're not even allowed to #MeToo, how can you get support from counsellors? Some of the numbers you've put up on the screen. We've had difficulty every step of the way because we've had to be quiet. We can't talk about it. It's going through the courts. Well, nobody said it's going to take 10 flipping years.
But also that's reiterating the trauma of actually what happened to you.
The legal process itself, right up to the very end, right up to the day that we walked into court to testify, the legal process, 24 years of it, did nothing but validate my dad. Can't tell, you're a liar. The first thing we do is we go check out your mental health history. Jeni did an enormous spiel in the book about how false
memories?
What's the word? False diagnoses have an impact. If you are labelled as schizophrenic because you are misdiagnosed as schizophrenic instead of having MPD, nobody comes along and rubs out that. It's there for everybody to read. And more importantly, it's there for your abuser and your abuser's lawyers to read. And then your mental health, which is destroyed by them, is now used by your abusers to batter you all over again. So my mental health was kept remarkably quiet by the police.
So when we had our Zoom call...
I'm not bonkers.
When we had our Zoom call,
yeah.
You said to me, I said, what is the one thing you want people to know? What's the reason that you wrote?
La entrevistadora no se dio cuenta. No se dio cuenta así de, déjala hablar, alguien más está ahí. Como que quería, la entrevistadora seguía pensando que era la misma, pero no.
The book. And you said to me, I want MPD destigmatized and I want it to be seen as evidence of a crime.
That's right.
Can you tell me about that?
Yep. MPD
Y regresó.
or DID, whichever is your particular flavour, only occurs in situations or settings where you are faced with extreme, overwhelming circumstances that you can't escape and you can't change. Now, most of the time, that is childhood sexual abuse. There are other circumstances, war and stuff like that, but again, you've got to be a child. If you've got MPD, the people around you need to be able to go, oh shit, trauma history, really bad trauma history, play gentle. And that will stop people like your family or your friends wanting to hear all the group.
Buena pregunta. ¿Creen que en entrevistas así es necesario anunciar o señalar los switches? No. No, definitivamente no. Debes tratar a la persona lo más natural posible. Y a veces sí es necesario, definitivamente sí es necesario seguir una línea. O sea, no creo que estuvo mal que la entrevistadora no haya hecho caso al switch. Si lo dejas completamente libre, sí puede salir tal vez algún alter que uno no pretenda. Entonces es como un tratar de volverlo a aterrizar. Entonces depende. O sea, definitivamente siendo amable. Entonces no creo que necesariamente esté mal. MPD o DID, Lore Reyel, ¿me explican qué significa? MPD, Multiple Personality Disorder. Es como se siente ella cómoda de decirlo. DID, Disociative Identity Disorder.
Gruesome details. I'm supported under the NDIS, and I've had support workers walk up and I say, so what do you know about me? There's plenty of information out there. What do you know about me? Oh, I know nothing. I prefer to hear it from you. Right, so you prefer to re-traumatise me. Fantastic. Right, where would you like me to start? Shall we go to the babies first, second, or shall we leave them out? It re-traumatises us. Whereas when I get a good support worker and they say, I've read your file. You don't have to tell me anything. What do you want to do today? They're the ones I keep.
Hi, Scotty.
Hi, Scotty.
Scotty's Jenny's fabulous support worker who just took amazing photos of us.
Yeah.
Other things.
Yeah, he's one that walked in and said, I read your file. I do not need you to tell me anything. And what he did was he and others like him took the burden of disclosure off me. And that's what we need to do when you're faced with someone with DID, MPD, or dissociative disorder not otherwise specified, DDNOS. So we've
Que definitivamente se sienten más familiarizados con el DSM-4, que fue con el que se diagnosticaron a sí mismos, porque el OTD, que es el otro trastorno disociativo especificado, es del DSM-5. Antes se le llamaba Not Otherwise Specified Dissociative Disorder, NOSDD, NOSDD, tenía una N. En OSDD actualmente todavía hay un Unspecified Dissociative Disorder. O sea, está padre que lo incluya. O sea, porque siguen siendo trastornos disociativos complejos que se parecen más que otra cosa y básicamente el tratamiento es el mismo. Entonces, hacer la diferenciación es como... más que nada estábamos hablando de espectros muy similares.
We've got a DID and then a DOS.
There's a lot of acronyms, isn't
I used to say, I'm not a DID, I was a done too. But, sorry, I don't mean to cut you off.
No,
but
it's
for
your
me,
show, Jenny.
MPD equals trauma. the worst kinds of trauma. So you're going to be faced with somebody who has trauma. They have difficult relationships with family members, or they may be completely away from their family members, or they may be in a situation where they're trying to back off to give themselves some space so that they can process things. If you say, I prefer to hear it from you, you're basically saying, I don't respect you enough to read the little bit that you wrote for everybody to know about. So DID, MPD equals victim of crime, not fantasist, playing around, or a liar. Because you can't fake MPD consistently.
We don't necessarily need to go into this, but one of the most amazing things in Jeni's book, as someone who's had mental health issues myself and written a lot about mental health issues, is the way that you were treated by so-called mental health professionals and the stigmatisation there. And then the counterweight to that was when your psychiatrist, Dr. George Blair West, he writes that there's possibly 100 million people on the planet with MPD. So the question I had is, why are we stigmatising this group, which includes you and 100 million others, when it's so many of us?
Yeah. Well, the numbers freaked us out.
Yeah, I can imagine.
The numbers were really scary. If you think 100 million people with MPD, hi, I'm Symphony.
Yes, I was going to say, are we talking to Symphony now?
Yeah. That's 100 million people who grew up in a world like I did, where you can't trust anybody to help you. Your job is to look after the mental and physical well-being of your family. 100 million people living with a monster like my dad, and I'm the first person to get justice. It's terrifying. And it makes me so angry because I'm the first one with MPD to get justice.
No los primeros en obtener justicia, pero definitivamente sí los primeros en obtener justicia por medio de su TID. Pero sí, la gran mayoría no obtiene justicia. Justamente terminamos de leer el libro de James Rhodes. Tuvo justicia de cierta forma muy tarde. La persona que lo maltrató sí fue, en general es la pequeña minoría, ¿no?, de gente que obtiene justicia, pero sí han habido personas que han obtenido justicia medio más o menos. Al menos hablando de qué tipo de justicia, ¿no? Al menos hablando de personas que pues encarcelamos porque hicieron algo mal. Muchas veces eso ni siquiera es suficiente. Entonces es como...
Why are we leaving the worst cases of abuse to be dealt with by the victim themselves? Because I had, so many disgraceful things said about me. Oh, you can't believe a word Jeni says? She's got multiple personality disorder.
Eso lo dice en su libro. Es bien horrible porque estaba en un grupo se supone que para apoyarse, en un grupo de apoyo, y como que de las dos, ¿no? O no le creas a Jeni porque tiene TID, o no le creas a Jeni porque inventa que tiene TID. Entonces, no importa si le crees que tiene TID o no, simplemente no le creen. Eso estuvo muy culero.
So, they wouldn't believe my abuse history because I had MPD. The only way I get MPD is to have an abuse history.
Yeah, it's the ultimate catch-22, isn't it?
And so I spent so much time looking after psychologists and counselors, and the chapter on that got written and rewritten and rewritten, and then we put names in, and then we took names out. But I will say one thing about this. We went to the Australian Federal Police in 1996, and we spoke to the amazing.
Una cosa importante de su historia es que, al menos del caso, es que nada más pudieron enjuiciar al padre por lo que sucedió en Australia, no por lo que sucedió en Inglaterra.
Kim Whitman. And she told me that I needed to go and see counsellors. So I did that. And arrangements were made between Kim, representing the AFP, and the support service that is unmentionable. And
For legal reasons.
for legal reasons. Because the unmentionables promised to take notes. They promised to document everything I said, so I didn't have to say it again. And it was going to go in as evidence. Now, Kim worked her butt off to get evidence to support me, to support my sister in the UK, who was also attempting to get justice. And I only went for justice to support her and to protect her. And the unmentionables decided that I had MPD, therefore I was crazy, so they didn't bother to document anything. So all of Kim's hard work was wasted because the evidence was there. I re-experienced what Dad did to me in front of these people. They should have videoed me. They would have seen exactly what this monster did. But because I have MPD, they didn't believe me. And so my first ever disclosures, and of course for the police, the first ever disclosures are the most important. They are the benchmark, and they check if your story changes over time, which it doesn't. And this group of obnoxious women failed to document anything. And they undermined my court case to the point that my dad was able to plead not guilty to me, and the judge in the UK said that he'd said he was not guilty, therefore he was not guilty.
Ese fue el primer juicio.
I've never forgiven the English for that, you know. So I've been declared a liar under English law. Because he did a plea bargain, because he knew that if he pled guilty to me, he'd never get out of jail. And look, he pled guilty to me and got 45 years in jail. Oops.
One of the things that you did in your book, which is actually quite hard to read, is the abuse that you detail is quite graphic. Why did you make the decision to describe what happened to you in that way, what your dad did to you?
In many texts about abuse, it's hinted at. It's obliterated by euphemisms and, oh, we won't go there. And we made a conscious decision that we would tell at least a teaspoonful of what happened, and then we edited out half the teaspoon. Because if people don't know what extreme abuse is like, they can't recognize it and they don't believe it when it's right in front of them. If we live in a world of euphemisms, we provide cover, once again, for our abusers. And if I say, oh, he touched me, he hurt me, You've got no idea what that means. If I say he made me pregnant at 10, you've got a very clear idea of what he did to get me to that point, which he did, unfortunately. It's not right not to tell. People need to know. And sure, we get to do the butt-naked Watusi, and we did that all through the book, and we waved our tail feathers, and you all got to hear quite a bit. But I can assure you, what you got in the book is the edited version of the edited book. Because we wrote and rewrote and rewrote, and then the lawyers say, no, can't put that word in, so take it out, what's a better word? Put a different word in. No, we don't like that one either. The problem is that by the time you get past your own filters, the publication filters, the legal filters, there's substantial parts of my story that are not in that book because they were eliminated for legal reasons. And while I respect that, there are parts of it that really irk me, because my story, while being ultimately joyous, there were 14 years of shit to sort of swim through first. And what I wrote in the book that ultimately got taken out of the book for legal reasons was a demonstration of enormous psychological growth. But because it was about a person that I wasn't supposed to talk about, it got cut. And what got cut was the story of my coming to terms with what my father did that occurred within the family unit and impacted everybody in that family unit. And it took me years to go from, I hate you, to, you'd have never done this if not for Richard John Haynes. Any other man in your world, any other father, you'd have been a great sibling. But I had to cut it, and it irks me. It really irks me, because...
Creo que habla de su hermana, no estoy segura. ¿Qué te ayuda para lidiar con las emociones que despierta esta clase de biografías, entrevistas que son fuertes de escuchar? Hablar con el sistema, definitivamente. Y de vez en cuando desconectar y escribir, dormir, ejercicio. Básicamente reconectarme con mi vida ahorita, porque es como no estoy en un momento feo. Estoy en un buen momento recordando cosas feas, which is not the same. Entonces es como reconectar con mi vida de ahorita.
I grew from the first page of that chapter all the way through to the end of that chapter, and we lost that. But, got to respect the lawyers.
Solidarity, Jeni, because I've done a lot of reporting in this area of childhood sexual abuse and also domestic abuse, and a lot of our laws stop a lot of stories being told.
They do.
Yeah.
Especially if we've got two jurisdictions here. We've got the English 7 years, and we've got the Australian 7 years. So
Es justo lo que les digo. Lo feo de su caso es que simplemente, enjuiciaron al padre únicamente por lo que sucedió en Australia. Porque decían, y en Inglaterra sucedió algo similar, no podemos juzgar a tu padre por cosas que no sucedieron en este país. Entonces, es así como... Es como bien imbécil, es la misma persona, misma víctima, misma cosa, misma historia. pero simplemente porque sus piecitos estaban en otro lado pintando una línea imaginaria. Ay, no, ya no podemos hacerse. Entonces, imagínense, si fue sentenciado únicamente por los años vividos en Australia, que es half, 45 años, hubiera sido triple cadena perpetua para el cabrón.
Australia could only do the bits that took place in their country. Yeah. We need a legal system that actually allows for a recognition that just because it happened outside of your jurisdiction doesn't mean it didn't happen. And we need some courageous law changes that say a country, in my case, England or Australia, can say, we're going to do the whole story. And yes, the laws in England are different, but we're going to apply the English laws to what occurred in England, but tell the whole story. Because there are people out there that think I survived from 4 till 11, and then it was all over. But six weeks old through to 14 years old. It's a bigger, bolder story. And I tried to capture that in the book without necessarily breaching
all the laws.
It's a minefield.
We are going to take some audience questions in a moment, but I have one question that I really need to ask you, and it's a hairy question.
Ah, yes.
So throughout this book, one of the things that is remarkable is that none of the adults around you took care of you. None of them paid attention or took it to the police or did the things that, as a mum, I just can't understand. I cannot understand this child going through this obvious abuse and no one paid attention. And the character at the centre of this is your mother. She's living in the house with your family and your father. And at times, she seemed almost willfully blind. She's bathing you. You've got infections because of the abuse that your dad caused. You've got marks, terrible injuries to your body.
No, no está en español. O sea, porque no lo han traducido en ningún idioma y solo fue publicado impreso en Australia. Es más fácil que lo consigas en Kindle.
And the question that I ask, and I know a lot of us here will be asking, is how could your mother not know?
Okay. That is the hairiest question of them all. It's a question that I've had a range of responses to over the years. I've defended, I've protected, but when people talk about abuse and they talk about, I would have known, how can you not have seen? Okay, I can't explain why my mum didn't see, but I can explain what I did to make sure that she didn't see. Over 1,000 altars were created simply to protect Mum. They were led by Captain Busby, who I can feel is fast approaching. Their job was to protect Mum from Dad. Now, a mother reading my book may say, I would have seen, I would have known, but that implies that you would have picked up on differences. How is my child different? They've been away for a school camp or they've been away for whatever and they've come back and they're different. I was never different. I was always abused. It's not like I suddenly changed because Dad started abusing me at 12. I didn't. I was abused from pretty much the minute I breathed. I was the punching bag, the slave, the scapegoat of my family. I had to protect my 2 siblings and my mum from my dad at all costs. I didn't change. Changing meant that you could be seen. Hello, I'm Captain Busby. And hi, Mum, I know you're listening to this. Mum couldn't see because I was busy hiding. If I got a bruise and she asked about it, he told me if I tell my mother, she will drop down dead in front of me. She will burn to death in a case of spontaneous human combustion. I'm not risking my mum. I fell at school. I knocked my leg multiple times against the desk at school. Multiple times, yes. It's a big one, so lots of times. I had to lie. And Symphony finds this really difficult because we pride ourselves on our honesty. We are honest when we should shut our mouths, really. But we couldn't be, because if we tell the truth, Dad's doing this. And bear in mind, I don't have the words for it. It's not like he tells me what he's doing. All he tells me is I'm a dirty little girl and I deserve it. It's punishment, or it's games. Stopped being games when I told Mum that I didn't like them, and the next day they became punishments. But I tried to tell. I did, but he told me she could read my mind. So I willed at her what he was doing. But he told me he could read my mind, and if I even thought about telling, he would kill my siblings. So is it reasonable to expect me to be able to tell when the next thing I know, Frank could be dead on the floor in front of me, or Sheila could be strangled? I couldn't do that. I couldn't do that because I love my family. I love my mum. I would do anything for my mum. She's my reason for existing. She's my job. And my job was to keep her safe from the monster in our house. Why Mum didn't see, I can't answer. But I can tell you this. Mum is a victim of domestic violence and coercive control. Everybody in a family where sex abuse is going on is a victim of domestic violence and coercive control, because that is the essence of the psychopath that lives in your family. She couldn't afford to see. Because what do? This is the 70s. Divorce is not exactly good, the top choice in the 70s. Even in the 80s, when she got divorced, she was met by a friend in the ladies' toilets who told her not to divorce the husband because things will change and, your children will move out eventually. Thankfully, she did not take that piece of advice. But nonetheless, it was given.
Yeah.
People will say, I stayed with my husband for the children. Get out now while you have the chance, because you don't want to stay with someone who's abusive for your children, because your children are their prime victim. Dad did things to me and said things to me about my mom that I didn't know whether to believe. Your mum knows I'm doing this. Your mum sent me to do this. Why would I tell my mother if she already knows?
Yeah. It's a very complicated situation, which your book does really unpick in an incredible way.
We have to remember, we're children.
Sí, I'm good. Sí me llegó, pero I'm good. Sí, no, no se preocupen, I'm good. I'm good.
Children. It's the adult's responsibility to draw conclusions. It's not the child's responsibility to tell.
Super dis. Es como que es algo que o sea, de que no es si un niño no dice, o sea, si los adultos no se enteran porque el niño no dice, pero los pinches adultos deberían saber, ¿no? O sea, cuando me preguntaron que qué me había pasado a los 6 años, que fue un momento feo, me desperté haciendo algo estúpido. Yendo hacia atrás, sí fue uno así de, tú eres el adulto, tú dime. ¿Yo cómo voy a saber? Tú se supone que eres el que me explica las cosas. ¿Por qué quieres que yo te cuente todo, que yo te explique? Yo no soy la experta aquí, yo no soy la adulta.
Tell you in explicit detail what's happening to them because we don't have the words. I mean, I didn't even know it was a penis until I drew 12 copies of it, having told the police, no, I never saw his penis. I never knew the name of this thing. I was 39. And saying, no, I never saw it because I didn't know the name. He didn't tell me. And my mum grew up in a family of secrets, as I've said. One of the things that wasn't secret was when her parents punished her or her brother. And it was done publicly, and the non-punished child would giggle and point at the one being punished. And when Mum grew up, got her own family, she decided the punishments were going to be private because she didn't want a rerun of what had happened in her world. Unfortunately, she'd married a man who thought that all his Christmases had come at once with this rule, and so punishments were private. And in 14 years of abuse, nobody ever walked in on me and Dad. It's a miracle. Nobody ever came in when he was hurting me. And yet, this was, for many years, this was a daily affair. But I couldn't tell Mum. Didn't have the words.
And I know this is a challenging question to answer because your mum is actually listening to the live stream and watching the live stream. Now, I do want to make sure we've got time for questions because you said to me that it was very important to you that people got to ask questions. I'm just going to have a quick look at the time. We are almost out of time. I do want to say, if anyone wants to ask questions, I am very strict about this. No disclosures, please, because we don't want anybody re-traumatised. And short questions that start with who, what, why, when, where, how. So does anyone want to ask Jeni a quick question? Anyone there? Anyone brave?
I don't bite.
We are actually, I mean, if no one has... Oh, yes, go ahead. And we've got Sonia, I think, coming with the... Or Jane, coming with the microphone, just so people on the live stream and the recording can hear you.
You said that you wanted to kind of push away the stigmatization of MPD. How do you feel about the way it's represented in pop culture?
¿Por qué siempre esa pregunta? Digo, es una pregunta muy curiosa, pero no se me habría ocurrido preguntar esa, pero siempre, ¿no? Siempre va a estar esa pregunta así de ¿te gustó la película de Split? Va, sigamos.
Oh, yes, Split. Ooh. I've watched a lot of movies around MPD. I've watched the representations of people who actually have MPD, so Sybil and Eve and Trudy Chase. And the movies get it wrong on so many levels. The vast majority of survivors with MPD are female. There are no female fictionalized stories for MPD.
Fucking totalmente. De hecho, justamente por eso estábamos poniendo en nuestro blog. No me acuerdo si hemos actualizado la tabla, pero sí la estamos poniendo. ¿Sí la actualizamos? Aquí está, género. Justamente lo ponemos como para que se vea, lo queremos, ya lo habíamos pasado, pero ya no le seguí. Hay una correlación entre que si el personaje es femenino o masculino y si es violento. Usualmente si el personaje es masculino, baja la calificación, o sea, una calificación alta significa menos estigma, o al menos menos errores. Si es mujer, la mayoría de las veces está bien. No todas las veces, también hay unas bien horribles. Pero si es hombre, por lo general no está tan bien. Sí es cierto, lo que sí es cierto es que las personas con TID, hombres, varones, al menos asignados varones al nacimiento, sí es verdad de que tienden a conductas más antisociales, no en el sentido de trastorno antisocial, sino en el sentido de que su forma de manejo es más agresión externa. Obviamente también hay interna, pero en las mujeres la agresión es mucho más interna. Por supuesto que también puede ser externa. Pero, porque hay poca gente violenta con TID, porque la mayoría son mujeres. Y en el TID no es exclusivo en esto. Por ejemplo, el TLP. Obviamente hay personas TLP violentas, ¿no? Pero el TLP es mayoritariamente femenino y no son personas usualmente violentas. Pueden ser muy violentas, autoviolentas. Suelen ser un poco agresivas, pero es más en una agresión defensiva. No violencia de tipo... Y por eso dicen de que tal vez no hay... la mayoría... O sea, también el por qué la mayoría de las mujeres tienen TID, más bien... No estuvo mal eso. ¿Por qué la mayoría de las personas diagnosticadas con TID son mujeres? Al revés, ¿no? Tal vez porque los hombres con TID no llegan nunca al clínico, no llegan nunca a hospital. Bueno, sí llegan, pero muy poco, ¿no? Llegan más bien a prisión, porque su forma de manejarlo no es ir a pedir ayuda, es ir a hacer algún desmadre, tal vez incluso en el intento de pedir ayuda. ¿Cuál fue la pregunta? Sobre qué opinaba de la representación del... Que de hecho ni siquiera terminó, perdón. Vamos a regresar tantito.
And Trudy Chase. And the movies get it wrong on so many levels. The vast majority of survivors with MPD are female. There are no female fictionalized stories for MPD. They are always men and serial killers. Okay, just to clarify, I'm a woman. I do not have a bunker under my rental house in which I am going to kidnap men. Although, doesn't happen, because if you have MPD as a result of serious abuse, the likelihood that you wish to dish that on anybody other than your abuser is so remote as to be laughable. I don't feel that I matter. I'm hardly going to go out and kidnap people and then murder them for the fact that they left me, when leaving me is what I expect people to do. If you don't matter, we don't even go down that way. But there was a lady in Brisbane who actually had MPD and did actually kill a gentleman. And when it came up, she refused to use her MPD as an excuse or a get out of jail free card. and they had a mental health hearing to see if she was actually allowed to do this. And she said, I have no intention of using this as an excuse. And she said the thing that I've always felt. If the gob says it and the body done it, I own it. Whereas if you watch pop culture...
Fucking this. La voy a enmarcar. La voy a poner. Quiero. Está para enmarcarla.
It's always abandoning responsibility, blaming somebody else. I only blame my dad for what he did and the consequences of what he did. I don't go out and kill people because they look like my dad, because they might actually have been thinking about doing something my dad did. To me, the whole way MPD is presented is lunacy. It's more lunatic than we are.
We're waiting for your screenplay, Jeni.
Waiting for your screenplay. No, imbécil, perdón. O sea, no es. O sea, sé que lo dijo de broma, pero no. Me emperra que la gente diga, ya hay que hacer una película basada. Güey, no necesitas dramatizar nada. ¿Por qué la gente no puede escuchar historias así? La gente platicándotelo. No, tienes que ver cómo la persona es maltratada. Güey, ¿por qué? Fucking güey. Y aparte, vamos a ver. Si hay personajes ficticios, vamos a ver los personajes, porque aquí también tenemos de que sí es caso real. Ok, mujeres, caso real. Aquí es una en Shattered Mind. Esa está buena. Esta sí me gustó. Esta sí está chida. Que yo sepa, no está basada en un caso real, pero esta sí me gustó. Waking Madison no es la mejor, pero me sorprendió. Me superó un poco mis expectativas, pero ya estaban un poco bajas. Lizzie está bonita. Lizzie está basada en una novela que está basada en... ¿Dónde está? En Las tres caras de Eva. ¿Por qué no me apareció aquí? Ahorita me aparece. Este no es ficticio. Separate Lives. No, eso está... Sucker Punch es raro. Algunas personas lo asumen. Black Swan, puedes interpretar cualquier cosa, entonces es como no. The Ward está what the fuck, sí está horrible. Deadly Illusions está muy what the fuck, sí es una asesina amnésica. Tales of Two Sisters también es asesina amnésica. Aquí está Las tres caras de Eva. Passion of Mind no está mal, está un poco confusa, muy lenta. No está mal, pero también está... The Scribbler es superhéroes, entonces Scribbler es como... aparte también tiene demasiadas madres, o sea, el argumento es... Bueno, al menos de las cosas estigmatizantes es... ¿Cómo se llama? Eliminar, quilear alters por medio de terapia electroconvulsiva. Sweet Girl es inconcluso y si es asesina. Tully, este está padre, pero no es necesariamente eso, pero este es un take muy interesante. Me gustó este take, pero no es exactamente TID, pero me gustó. No diría que es de TID, pero no está mal. Está padre y está muy reveladora de problema de depresión materna. Sí, de depresión, de que está superada. Esta está muy extraña. No, esta no me gustó tanto. No está... Tiene momentos muy padres. Lo que pasa es que tiene momentos muy padres, pero la mayoría es como, ¿qué demonios está pasando? La vida secreta de... Esta está padre. Esta sí me gustó. No es tan claro que es un TID. No se centra en eso. Esta está padre, pero no es la típica película. Las dos caras... Que de hecho esta me parece que es por un director español. Las dos caras de mi novia. Esta está coreana, muy rara. Súper rara. Pero no me gustó el final. Iba más o menos bien, pero el final estuvo feo. Look Away. Esta no me gustó. Esta me causa mucho conflicto porque están hablando de un adolescente y le están sexualizando extremadamente y eso no está cool. No manches, esta no me acuerdo. Ah, no, ya sé cuál es. No. Sí, no, esta es onda paranormal. No me gustó Laberintos. Mucha gente nos pregunta qué tal nos gustó Laberintos. No, espérate, este ya es hombre. Sí, es hombre. Sí, ya acabaron las ficticias mujeres. La mayoría de ficticias mujeres no son unas locas asesinas amnésicas. Sí hay, pero no necesariamente. ¿Por qué son asesinos? Porque a la gente le encanta. No sé por qué le encanta siempre como que tipo novela negra. Porque viene de eso. Justamente odié mucho a... nada en contra de persona en particular, pero absolutamente en contra de su idea. No es enteramente su culpa ser ignorante. No le deseo nada mal, pero sí le deseo que se dé cuenta de lo culero que es. Porque dijo algo así, una TikToker que se dedicaba a... que de hecho creo que fue un video que comentamos, así de que, ay, sí, no es cierto, o habrá sido otro, creo que fue otro, porque hay varias personas que dicen, tener personajes con TEID es muy divertido, porque siempre puedes poner que hay un asesino, pero en realidad es la persona la que estaba buscando el crimen, la que trataba de solucionar el caso. Jay, ¿cómo hacer una historia sin pensar? Jay, no necesitas ni manos ni cerebro, porque ya está hecha, ya se ha contado 1000 veces, y es bien divertido contar la misma historia una y otra vez. Es bien divertido usar un trastorno mental para un asesino. No se dan cuenta de que es gente perezosa, poco creativa y mediocre as fuck. Si quieres usar, es que mi personaje va a ser diferente, güey, no, la neta no. Tu personaje no va a ser diferente si la gran mayoría de lo que conoces es exactamente lo mismo. A todos les digo, todos los que quieran ser escritores, ¿quieren ser buenos escritores? Lean un chingo. Lean un chingo. Pero tipo lean un chingo de todo, absolutamente de todo, para que puedan también romper esas cosas del clásico cliché. Que su almohada nunca esté fría. Qué extraño. A mí no me molesta que no esté fría, entonces pero entiendo que a la gente le molesta. Esto le ocurre más a los que cuando vi Shutter Island venía buenísima y cuando aparece al final fue como, es que te deja todo confuso. ¿Realmente existe un personaje aún no se haya escrito? Es como inventar, o sea, no se trata de inventar un color. Se trata de pintar algo diferente. Usas los mismos colores. Se trata de contar otra historia usando los mismos colores, ¿me explico? O sea, no inventar un nuevo color. Y de nuevo no irse con el mismo cliché, o sea, no puede ser más mediocre que eso. Ah, ya se contó la historia de bla, 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 hay que volverla a contar, es bien divertido, güey. Para fanfics, si eres un adolescente que está empezando con fanfics, perfecto. Pero si ya te quieres decir un escritor profesional, pues eso habla de la calidad. Sigamos escuchando.
Only if I get to make sure it's correct.
Yeah, that's right. We won't invite the lawyers. Has anyone else got a question? We are nearly out of time. Maybe just one more. Yes, go ahead.
I've always wanted to know, since talking to Symphony, have you ever thought, rather than do a screenplay, as you know, I work in the music industry, would you like to write a couple of songs, or have you written a couple of songs, not about what happened, but more about the amazing survival that you've got? Like, you know, we've got a Judas in common. Mine's a little bit more real world and a bit more annoying than yours is. Yours is fantastic.
Yours is sexy.
Yeah.
Mine is not. He's a little boy.
Yeah. Mine acts like, so yeah, you're fine. Yeah, that was my question.
I've never thought of doing that. I'll be honest.
Ready to go with you.
Anyone got a guitar?
Drum kit. Yeah.
Very healing, that's what I found. So I'm just wondering what your thoughts were.
Music has been so important to me. Because Dad said he could read my mind, I think in song lyrics, even this evening, most of what I've said has first come to my head as a song lyric, which can be tricky. Even your Judas gets a couple of quotes in that one from Jesus Christ. Yeah. So I think in song lyrics, I associate so strongly with music. I have an alter named Gabrielle. She's responsible for all this. She's our lady. She's absolutely stunning. But she was born from the song lyrics of the Osmonds. So everything that they sang about their girl, how pretty she was, how understanding she was, how honest she was, that is what our Gabrielle took. It's not like she created it. It's we took that and gave it to Gabrielle to keep safe. So when we've talked about a number of times, there's been a question of how does MPD save your soul? This is how it does it. MPD or your alters find things that matter and they cut them out and they keep them safe. Gabrielle got to keep everything about being a woman, everything about being a girl that was pretty and dainty, the ballerina stuff, everything. Gabrielle holds the lot. And finally, after Dad was sent to prison for 45 years, Gabrielle got to emerge, much like the butterfly, and she took over, and well, this is the result. Thank you.
Woohoo! All right, we are going to leave it there, even though I could talk to you for another 5 hours. Thank you so much for coming tonight, and thank you for your honesty, and thank you for writing such an amazing book, and thank you for making legal history.
Oh yeah, that was amazing.
And thank you to Ginger and to Jeni for that really challenging and honest discussion. It was fabulous. I'd like to thank you for coming tonight and encourage you to come and meet out in the foyer to meet Jeni in person, and she's available to sign some books, I understand. And I'd like to thank you for coming to our wonderful library, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. But thank you once again very much to Jeni.
Dice, Reyel, si tú, ouch, si estuvieras en esa conferencia, ¿qué le preguntarías a Jeni? Fíjate, no lo habló, y lo habló bien poquito en su libro, pero tengo muchísima curiosidad de cómo le ha ido, de si siguió investigando qué onda con su epilepsia. Porque menciona, y yo quisiera saber si es epilepsia o si son convulsiones no epilépticas. O sea, como que me hace falta que hables esto, por favor. Pero igual, tal vez otra pregunta que yo le haría es así de... O sea, sé que te ayudó. O sea, las preguntas fueron más como de medios, ¿no? O sea, películas y música. Yo le preguntaría de libros. O sea, si yo le diría, a mí estos libros me ayudaron. O este libro me hizo sentir mejor, ¿no? Por ejemplo. Y sí menciona un par. Y sí le diría así de, ¿qué libro, además del tuyo, obviously, podrías recomendarle a la gente que diga así de, así como que resueno mucho con este? Lore pregunta, yo estoy escribiendo mi historia, pero de otra forma, como en clave, como que en clave. ¿Qué opinas sobre personas con idea que cuentan su historia, pero como un cuento? Eso lo hago yo. Y eso lo hemos hecho desde los 14, 15 años. Es una forma de manejo, es súper válida. Y yo creo que es mucho más necesario. Creo que es mucho más valioso viniendo de una persona con TID, aunque no sea literalmente cierto. Por ejemplo, si lo haces en forma de conejitos o en forma de, como lo hizo Trudy Chase con su cuento de criatura de hábito, criatura, no es un animal en específico, es una criatura. Y contar un poquito como una forma de relativamente ficticia, eso se me hace mucho más valioso que una persona que dice, es bien divertido, porque bla, 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 que tiene una desconexión emocional absoluta de todo lo que significa. La pregunta muy enfocada al diferencial. Sí. Un poco. Como algo somatomorfo. Ajá. Como con metáforas. Creo que eso es mucho más valioso. Quiero ese cuento de Trudy en físico. Yay. No lo he terminado. Sí lo quiero terminar. Pero para hacer cuento está pesado. Su forma de escribir es pesada. Una pregunta es que estoy en tu página y no funciona la redirección a papers y artículos. ¿En serio? Papers y artículos. O sea, por ejemplo, si nos vamos... a ver, vámonos a... Es que está muy largo este. A ver. Papers. Papers. Eso es correcto. No existe. ¿Qué? Está... Sí tienes razón que hay algo aquí. Ok. A ver si es nada más ese. A ver si nos queremos ir acá. Ok, a ver, hay otra forma de llegar. ¿Qué tal si nos vamos acá? ¿Dónde era? Recursos. Papers. Ah, mira, ok, entonces funciona desde... Dime si te funciona desde acá. Desde el de recursos. En la página de inicio no funciona. Y es lo que tengo que ver. Dime si te funciona esta. Se puede en el menú desplegado. Ah, desde... qué raro. Ok, voy a ver qué está pasando ahí. ¿Qué? Ah, pues qué bonito. ¿Cuánto tiempo llevamos? Yo creo que ya me voy porque son 2 horas y media de directo. ¿Quién quiere un ride? Porque también necesito moverme. Ya vi que descansar no es lo que necesita mi espalda. Necesito estarme moviendo. O sea, no quedarme en una posición más que nada. Ok, solo responden para Twitch. Sí, es que no sé qué es Neon Demon. Es que dijiste, ¿vieron de Neon Demon? No sé de qué me hablas, entonces estuve esperando a ver si alguien sabía, pero la neta no sé qué es eso. Neon Demon. ¿Alguien sabe qué es eso de Neon Demon? A mí me están contando los de adentro cómo es estar allá atrás. Ajá. Ok, creo que sí te estoy entendiendo. Sí, ¿ya me funciona así? Ah, pues déjame ver qué está pasando con la página, porque ya me habían dicho eso y no encontré ningún error cuando ya me habían dicho así de tu página no funciona. Y no vi ningún error, pero ya lo vi. Entonces tengo que ver qué onda. Que está raro, pero de todas maneras... Ay, iPhone. Ay, gracias. Gracias por hacerte miembro. ¿Qué? Es una película. Sí, pero siento mezcla un poco de todo, te diré. ¿De qué año? ¿Pensáis que Jeni ha perdonado a su madre o no está en la posición de no tener que perdonar nada? Sé que recientemente dijo algo parecido, algo relacionado más bien respecto a su madre. Yo creo que no llegas a un momento de perdón. Creo que está en ese proceso todavía. Está en ese proceso de dejar de protegerla. Creo que todavía está en ese proceso. Creo que es irremediable. Todavía lo hizo en esta entrevista. Entonces yo creo que no es como que ya haya llegado a esa etapa. Y aparte no es como necesario, ¿sabes? Es como... No creo que deba ser un objetivo llegar a eso. Yo siento que es nada más algo que sucede. ¿Qué va a hacer? Ah, sí, íbamos a ver si hacíamos raid. ¿Alguien pidió raid? ¿Hay forma de contactarse con Jeni? Yo supongo que desde su página de Face. Pues al menos sí, le puedes comentar directo público en su... Según yo no está para mandarle mensaje. Es nada más para hacerle comentarios. Sí le hemos comentado, de hecho, sobre si quiere traducir su libro. Según yo nunca nos respondió. Supongo que le llegan un montón de mensajes. Yo creo que los voy a mandar. ¿A quién lo mandamos? Vamos a mandarles a... ¿Quién está? ¿Quién está? ¿Quién está? O random. ¿Pero qué? Gracias por el contenido. Gracias a ustedes. Pues les voy a mandar a... No hay mucho a quien mandarle. Pues así, vamos a dejarlo así. No había nadie. Nadie está conectado. Llegamos tarde, nos vemos el video mañana. Sale. Sean bonitos, sean suavecitos. Lean un chingo, pero también si está siendo demasiado pesado, también tómense un descanso. Y vean algo bonito. Vean alguna comedia o jueguen con gatitos o vean videos de gatitos. Bechitos.